right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac on a Saturday morning. We have the NBA tournament, in-season tournament, that is, the inaugural championship game. We've got the Lakers with the venerable LeBron James hosting the Indiana Pacers. 4.5-point favorites are the Lakers. This should be a fun one, Adam. But it's made for some very weird NBA scheduling this last 10 days or so. How are you doing? Are you ready for like one college football game, one NBA game, a crappy MMA slate? You were just lauding Saturdays last weekend.
Yeah, I am not looking forward to today. Like I've had a lot of stuff that I've kind of just like put off all week, just like cleaning and stuff around the apartment that I'm gonna do today, I guess, because I have nothing better to do.
Yeah, it was. I was saying to my mom's here and my wife's friend, I'm like, "Oh, we should do something tonight." And they're like, "Oh, well, we've already made plans. We figured you had sports." And I'm like, "Oh, not really tonight." And I did not partake in Thursday night football since it was my wife's birthday, so we went out to dinner. So I just made one lineup for that, and I didn't make my eyes bleed. Though I did see 1/8 on Shander turning $60 into $4,500. It's a pretty good ROI, Adam.
It's cool seeing Aton win.
All righty. Well, let's kind of meander through the one game that we have. We'll kind of hit the high notes here. To refresh everybody, since it's been a while since we've had single slate playoff basketball, we know that the key players are going to get a ton of minutes. There's narratives, especially with LeBron James, adding another trophy or another accolade of being the first winner of the NBA in-season tournament. So that'll make things interesting. And then we'll talk a little bit about Underdog and the Sims. Underdog is the presenting sponsor of the show. So you guys will want to check that out. If you go through the link that is in the YouTube description below us here, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Let's start off with the Pacers here, Adam. How so shocking is it that their offense has surpassed their defense, their poor defensive efficiency? They're playing at one of the fastest paces in the league, one of the most efficient offenses in the league, and one of.
I can't hear you. You are frozen.
Oh, hopefully I'm back now.
Yeah, you're back now.
All right. Well, I was setting you up. Let's talk about the Pacers being one of the fastest paced teams, one of the best offenses, and somehow that offense outpacing their defensive efficiency rate.
Yeah, I mean, the offense for Indiana is great. It has been all season long. Number one in adjusted offensive rating this year. The defense is terrible. So you generally get fast, fun Pacers games. And this is the matchup I was hoping for as far as Lakers and Pacers. You have three stars in the game, Haliburton obviously being one of them. He's up to 12-4 on DraftKings. So he is $800 more than LeBron. He's $1,000 more than Davis. He's been great this year, but as a result of him being so expensive, you are getting a little bit less ownership coming into him, which I do think is interesting. He's still going to be extremely popular. 63.5% total ownership, 44.5% at utility, 19% at captain. But that is slightly behind LeBron and Davis, particularly at captain. You're seeing him in terms of ownership percentage at utility, pretty comparable to those two, but at captain, only 19% compared to 25% LeBron, 31% Davis. So if you can get all the way up to Haliburton at captain, it's an interesting way to be contrarian. We've already seen in this tournament, not that it's indicative of what's going to happen today, but we've already seen Haliburton in games where he's with other stars that maybe are more popular, like Giannis, just go out and outperform them. The ceiling is certainly there. Relatively likely that he is the highest scorer on the slate. So he's obviously really interesting. Miles Turner coming in at 9,200. He played 32 minutes last game. Thought he would maybe play a bit more. We had seen 34 minutes the game before that. He played well last game, still only got 32. One thing I did not like about the Pacers last game from a DFS standpoint was that they did go to a full 10-man rotation, which surprised me in a semifinal game, especially after they had essentially cut Nembhard out in the first game. Isaiah Jackson had not played at all in the previous game. Josh and I talked about maybe they would go to Isaiah Jackson because of the matchup, but they went to Jackson and they went to Nembhard, and McConnell stayed in the rotation. So I don't know if they're going to keep that rotation for the championship game or not. Does Nembhard got hurt, so I assume they just go back to 9 instead of replacing him with like Wara or something. But I still just the minutes were just a lot flatter in that game than I expected, which does make me nervous tonight.
Yes. So Nemhard has been ruled out with the knee issue. Jalen Smith, all but assuredly out. He's missed the last 4 games. And then on the other side, Gabe Vincent, he hasn't played in the last 19 games. And even if he comes back, I don't see big minutes for him tonight because of the condensed rotation. But it is interesting because we have to, we start to look at some of the, well, everybody's a tertiary play on, there are no secondary plays on the Pacers when you have Halliburton. He's light years ahead of everybody else. But Bruce Brown has really kind of come into his own here as a true secondary option. We've got TJ McConnell lurking, limited minutes, 9 and 11 minutes, I think, the last couple games. But he's someone that could get up to 12, get a couple steals, and all of a sudden he pops for 20 fantasy points. Miles Turner, Mr. Enigmatic, we never know exactly what we're going to get with him. Usually it's bad until you are convinced yourself he's not much of a fantasy producer, and then he rips off a 50 fantasy point game once a month to come back into our collective minds, or make us freak out of our collective minds. It's going to be kind of fun today, Adam, here. If you look at who do you think will get the bulk of the minutes if you were looking at the Pacers? I know you said it's a little bit uncertain, but we can kind of infer that Halliburton should see the most clearly. Who after that is would be on your short list?
Yeah, clearly Halliburton should see the most. He played 36 and a half last game. He played 40 in the previous game. He had a much more normal second half rotation last game, more in line with like what you would expect. In the first half, they kind of just left him on the bench for a while. TJ McConnell was playing well. The Pacers second unit was gaining on Milwaukee. And so they used that opportunity to just sort of rest Halliburton for a little bit in game. I think it's more likely if the only 2 options I could have are 36 minutes or 40, at least I still think 40 is more likely in this game. I think projecting him 38, 39 makes sense, but clearly he's going to play a ton. You're expecting 32 plus minutes from Miles Turner. The rest of it just gets dicey though. Like Bruce Brown is somebody that his skill set translates to playing a lot of minutes in playoff type games. But last game you didn't see it. Now he did get hurt. He went to the locker room, but he came back. He only finished that game at 28 minutes. So I thought there was a good chance he was going to play 36, 37 last game. We had seen, I think, 34 or 35 in the first one. So I still think it's more likely he plays mid-30s here than upper 20s, but especially with Nemhard out. But it's still kind of risky. The playing time for like all of the non-Halliburton guys are tough. Nobody other than Halliburton played more than 32 minutes last game. Turner played 31.8. Hield played 30 on the nose. Nobody else got to 30. And the closing lineup usually is going to be Nesmith over Toppin along with the starters. We've seen that 2 games in a row now. I expect it to be the case here. The caveat is if they are losing, there's a chance that you get Mathurin out there instead of Nesmith. If Obi Toppin just happens to be playing amazing, maybe he closes, but Nesmith should be the assumed closer. I think expecting 26 to 30 minutes from him makes sense. Mathurin probably playing anywhere from like 24 to 27 off the bench. A lot of the non-Halliburton Halliburton Turner Hield guys, and to some extent Brown, are just going to depend on how the game is going. But even Brown, again, last game, even excluding that injury, didn't play a lot.
All righty, let's look at. I wanted to show everybody something here on Underdog, which is really fun. So they have every game format that you can imagine. They have daily drafts, season-long drafts, best ball, etc. Their daily drafts, they have contests, GPP style contests. They have for NFL Sundays, they have a contest where you draft your team and then end up playing against a larger group of players. So, hey, stacking is key, all that fun stuff. But on their pick'em side here, especially for those of you that are in states that do not have sports wagering yet, it's a lot of fun. It's similar to that in that you build out a player card. But what I'm showing here is I did not do well on my card here last night. But I wanted to call out they have these things called scorchers. So sometimes they'll put milestones up here or props that aren't available on some of the other pick'em sites, such as double doubles, etc. And usually they will add a little multiplier on those. So I had one here with Kuzma last night. So that because I put him in my lineup, it put a 2.75 Scorcher multiplier on this. So my $5 wager would have netted me 137. So it's kind of an interesting way to do different things here. So it's a lot of fun. It's very easy to navigate, and you can filter on anything that you want. You can type in any name in the search bar for the pick'ems. You could type in, if we wanted to say, hey, let's look at all the Lakers. You can type in their name and it'll filter just on Lakers. You can go for individual players, etc. So it's pretty easy to navigate and a lot of fun. But that is Underdog Fantasy here. All righty, Adam. Speaking of the Lakers, they are the other team in this game here. How many minutes for LeBron? Is he going to touch 40 tonight?
Yeah, so we didn't really get to see a second half rotation from him last game because it was completely unnecessary against the Pels. He played 16 minutes in the first half, so obviously that would put you on pace for 32. But in the previous Lakers game, he had also played around 16 or so in the first half, and then just played almost the entire second half, ended up getting up close to 40. So I think that it's likely that you're getting close to 40. I'm viewing him the same way I'm viewing Halliburton. He actually did get to 40 against the Suns. He played the entire fourth quarter of that game. He played the final 14 minutes of that game and also played the first 8 minutes of the second half. So basically played the entire second half minus a couple of minutes. I expect something similar here where he probably plays a little bit shorter first half rotation because, like, obviously if the Lakers could just win this game with LeBron playing 28 minutes, they would love to, but that's most likely not going to happen. So I think it's likely that you see a similar rotation where he plays more modest minutes in the first half. And then, assuming the game is competitive down the stretch, he just basically doesn't leave the floor and gets close to 40. I think it's likely he plays right around the same minutes as Halliburton. LeBron wants to win this. He's still very clearly one of the best players in the NBA. Anybody that was doubting that before this in-season tournament shouldn't be doubting it anymore. So, assuming the game's competitive, I think you're getting close to 40 from LeBron, and I think you're probably getting close to 40 from Davis as well.
Yeah, that's kind of where not that takes great analysis, but that's kind of where I've landed on this as well. When we look ahead, the Lakers next take the court on Tuesday. That's the front end of a back-to-back. They're going on a 3-game road trip here in Texas, technically 2 stops. The first stop is in Dallas on Tuesday. Then they play in San Antonio Wednesday. That would be what, could expect LeBron to potentially sit out that San Antonio game. And then they rematch San Antonio on Friday. As well. So that's their upcoming schedule. So they have at least, Sunday and Monday off. So unlimited minutes tonight if it is a close game. Moving to what type of script do you think it would take or what are Davis's paths to lead to the fantasy production tonight amongst him and LeBron and Halliburton? Is the blocks going to be the key?
I mean, it's Anthony Davis. He does everything. Like, he's very comparable to LeBron in terms of point per minute production. You're projecting similar playing time. All of these guys, Halliburton, LeBron, and Davis, are very, very similar. All likely to play, 38 to 40 minutes, all 1.4 plus fantasy points per minute for the year. Davis is at 1.43. LeBron's at 1.44. Halliburton, going from memory, I think is around 1.5. Again, he's the more expensive of them, though. But, any of these guys can very easily be the highest scorer on the slate. Davis has been very good this year as well. If you look at overall EPM this season, LeBron is 5th in the NBA. Halliburton is 4th. Davis is like 13th. There's 3 guys in the top 15 NBA players so far this season in this game, and any of those 3 can just very easily be the highest scorer.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of fun here. How are you looking at the scrub-a-dubs? Do you think? Tell me anybody you don't think is in play for 10 minutes tonight. How much will they? Let me rephrase that. How much will they tighten their rotation on the back end, and then we'll talk about the middle next.
Yeah, so I'm expecting a pretty similar Lakers rotation to what we got last time in the first half. Obviously, I'm not expecting 8 minutes from Max Lewis or Hood Schifino or anything, but it was pretty comparable to what we had seen in the previous game. So 2 games ago against the Suns was the first game that the Lakers have really been healthy this year, top to bottom. And so there were a lot of question marks about what they were going to do. We saw Christian Wood DNP Christian Wood also was not in the rotation last game. He played 8 minutes of garbage time at the end, but wasn't in the rotation. So not expecting him to play. Obviously, you're not expecting the other end of bench guys to play. 2 games in a row now, they've used Jackson Hayes as the direct backup to Anthony Davis. So Jackson Hayes' minutes, at least based on the 2 games where they've been healthy, are 48 minus Anthony Davis. So Davis plays 40, Hayes plays 8. Davis plays 38, Hayes plays 10. That's been what they've done with him. He is only 1,800. Hayes is pulling 12% ownership, all of it, of course, at utility. So I am expecting him to still be the backup center here. Austin Reeves closed 2 games ago. He closed the first half last game. Nobody closed the second half. I'm expecting him to stay in that role where he's giving you like 26 to 28 minutes off the bench, most likely in the closing lineup over either Cam Reddish or D'Angelo Russell. Max Christie was once again essentially cut. Like, he's in the rotation, but he's giving you, 8 to 10 minutes. So at 3K, he becomes really, really difficult to get to. He's not getting any ownership at all. If you wanted to make some sort of case for him, it would be, what if things change? What if he just knocks down his first couple threes, they give him a few extra minutes, whatever. But really tough to get to him at 3K. When you have Jared Vanderbilt at 2,600, you have Jackson Hayes at 1,800 as cheaper plays that are playing similar, if not more minutes. Vanderbilt played 15 minutes 2 games ago against Phoenix. Last game, he played 14, 5 in the first half, a bit more than that in the second half. I think expecting right around 14 minutes or so from him makes sense at 2,600. So it is nice that we've gotten a pretty consistent Lakers rotation between the last 2 games. The big question is, it would have been really nice to see a second half closing lineup, because I do think you're going to see some volatility there. We know LeBron James is always going to close. We know Anthony Davis is always going to close. Realistically, the next 3 spots could be like any pairing of Russell, Reddish, Prince, Rui, Reeves. My best guess is LeBron Davis, Reeves, and then 2 of Prince, Reddish, Rui. I think it's unlikely that Russell's in the closing lineup. They can just put a better defensive unit out there. You don't need D'Angelo Russell's offense when you have both of LeBron and Davis on the floor. But who that ends up being out of, Reddish, Prince, Vanderbilt even, and Rui, I think is still up in the air. It makes, to me, the uncertainty makes Rui really interesting at 4,200. He's getting 27.5% ownership right now on DraftKings, 26% utility, 1% captain. He played 21 minutes against the Suns in his first game back from injury. Last game, he played the same exact 21.4 minutes. But again, we didn't get a closing lineup there. So there is a path to Rui, if he's playing well, getting you, I think, 24, 25 minutes. I don't think that's the most likely outcome. I think he should be projected around 21 to 22. But I do think that there are potentially more minutes available for Rui at 4,200, and we just haven't happened to see it yet in these first 2 games back.
Yeah, that's a nice call out there. Dempsey in chat likes that one. Einsteinium said, "Do you think we'll see more of Andy today?" I think Adam
you could. I have trouble saying I expect it, just because of Rui being back as well. Like, I think Rui plays more minutes than Vandy, barring something unusual happening. I think Vandy's kind of just locked into this like 14 to 16 minute role, which for his price is fine. And maybe if like somebody gets in foul trouble or gets hurt, he could play more. I think it's less likely that Vanderbilt steps into like a big minutes game than Rui.
Alrighty. On the screen here, I have the Sims product here for the single game slate. So this is something we offer for FanDuel and DraftKings. You can see that I've built out a lineup, a contest pool here. You can decide how many lineups you want in your pool, and then that's what is going to construct the contest, and then we'll get to choose from those later. You can set your contest archetype here. I've got it on marquee, which just means it's going to be pretty high payout to the top. You put it in low stakes, that gives a kind of a flatter payout. High stakes starts to give a bit of a flatter payout, but also weights, knowing that the players are going to be more popular than they appear for the larger contest, because the high stakes players tend to coalesce around specific plays. We can boost ownership of players that we want representation in our pool. Once we do that, we can regenerate our lineups here. You can see how fast this moves along here. And again, this is what Aton used for the football version to turn his $60 into $4,500 Now, your mileage may vary. He just said he clicked a few buttons, picked some lineups, and submitted them. That's catching lightning in a bottle, but it does show that it is pretty simple to do things. The one thing I want to remember as you start to utilize this Sims product is you're going to feel like you're going to lose some of the control, and you need to play around with the controls and settings to understand that increasing a player's ownership in the pool could have a different effect once they build out the contest, because this is going to search for the best ROI situation, which means they're hoping the most popular player could fall and another lineup would get there. There will be other situations where the most popular player, even if you boost it, they're going to, the Sims are going to tell you to play even more of that player because it's just that good of a situation. But this is pretty easy to utilize. You can see that we can filter on individual lineups. Oops, let me start the simulations here. I did that out of order. So it takes all the lineups we created. It says, did you like what you did? Now we're going to simulate the contest. We can boost individual player ROIs to make them more popular or appear more often in things. So like if we really bumped up Anthony Davis in the captain, and we dropped somebody else, that would change things around here. But that boost here up for the ROI does allow us to get a different sort, check things out, etc. You can see here any lineup that has Davis got a slight boost, so he's now going to appear as the captain in the vast majority of the top lineups. So this is a lot of fun. It's a pretty good tool that practice with it a little bit if you're a subscriber. You can see in the upper right here, we've got tutorial videos. We have a full channel in our Discord that talks about how to utilize this. Greg is doing shows constantly covering this sort of stuff, and he has several evergreen videos. So this is a lot of fun to play around with, but that is the Stochastic Simulator tool. All righty, Adam, let's hit the middle of this Lakers lineup here. The real question is... Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to, to follow up on Stanium's question. I don't have an actual answer to what he asked, but just from an interesting standpoint to see how it plays out, he asked about more pick and roll out of Halliburton and Turner. Indiana as a team, 96th percentile in points per possession for their pick and roll ball handlers this year. Lakers, 83rd percentile in defending it. So should be a fun matchup from that standpoint, just to see who wins out. But from a DFS standpoint, don't know, don't care.
Yeah, it's the spacing, the pace, the regular season, right? To me, these games in the in-season tournament from the quarterfinals on, we've seen the shortened benches or shortened rotations, right? That's similar to playoff. They're just not playing the defense. They are on certain possessions or whatever, but just some ungodly scores have come out of these games. So that's the part where
that's because the Pacers cannot play defense.
If they want to,
they can't play defense.
Yeah, broadly for these games as a whole, though, I don't think we're seeing playoff defense in this tournament. Like
I think you're seeing more like the year. You're seeing stretches of it, but you're still not seeing the entire game.
Exactly. So that's and to your point is, if the Pacers flip the switch, does anything actually change if they're trying to play defense? That's kind of hard to know.
I mean, like that's why Neesmith is closing games.
Yeah,
because Obi Toppin's incapable of playing defense at all. And Matt, that's not Matt.
Those alley oops, Adam.
Right?
Those alley.
Yeah. So I mean, like something like that, and it's to your point about rotations, like something like that does matter. Like there's the reason Neesmith is most likely to be the guy closing for the Pacers is purely defensive reasons. If this were just a regular season game, it would truly be, I have no idea between Toppin, Neesmith, and Mathurin who is closing. With this being a kind of playoff game, it's Neesmith unless there's a reason for it not to be.
All right, let's hit the middle of this Pacer or the Lakers rotation here. We've seen Austin Reeves probably have the best path as a closing option. He was so great down the stretch in the playoffs last year and down the stretch of the final part of the season. He's carved himself out a role, it seems, at the expense potentially of D'Angelo Russell. But if Russell is splashing threes, he's not going to be out of the mix either. It's just a little tougher to see him in towards the end of the game. And then the challenge with Russell is not the best shooter, and then the ball's going to be in LeBron's hands for a lot of it. So he kind of loses those assist possibilities. What do you think of our secondary options here for the Lakers?
Yeah, so it becomes tricky. I am happy to see. So we have Russell projected for 27 minutes right now. I had seen, I don't know where the industry will end up at tonight, but I had seen going into their last game that some sites were still being really aggressive, giving Russell like 29, 30 minutes. I think we had 27 last game too, but I'm not convinced at all that that's the most likely outcome. I don't think Russell closing is likely. And so it is a situation at 7,400 where he's not projected for a ton of ownership now. He's at 25%. I think that's pretty reasonable. He was projected for a decent amount of ownership last slate, and I didn't get it at all just because of that. I think expecting mid-20s from Russell is very, very reasonable, given that it's just extremely likely that Reeves and somebody are closing over, or that Reeves is closing, and it could very easily be in place of Russell. So at 7,400 on a one-game slate at 25% owned, he is still fine, but definitely keep in mind that again, going back to defense, he serves no purpose in the Lakers closing lineup now that they're healthy. But beyond
that's a good call out there.
Yeah. Beyond that, this is a team, like I was saying before, that there's a lot of volatility in minutes because of their closing lineup. When you think about guys that could be out there, it's, again, it's LeBron, it's Davis, it's most likely Reeves. And then it's just two of Reddish, Prince, Rui, maybe Vanderbilt, maybe Russell. So there is volatility in minutes for those guys. We saw Reddish close the Phoenix game. Reeves closed the first half over Reddish last game. Russell was out there. My assumption, again, is that in the fourth quarter, it would be Reeves over Russell, and then maybe Reddish, maybe not. But at 4,600, Reddish is getting 30% ownership. Prince is getting 22. Prince is an interesting one because there is still volatility there. We haven't really seen it yet. He played 27 minutes against Phoenix. He played 23 and 3/4 against the Pels. So we didn't see that fourth quarter rotation. But there's nothing forcing Taurean Prince to play 27, 28 minutes. He could, in any given game, just as easily play, be done after the third quarter. He gets his 23 minutes. He's done. Rui picks up an extra few minutes and closes over him. So Taurean Prince, I think, has volatility in there. We already talked about Rui. Ideally, you would, I think, when you talk about the Reddish, Prince, Rui group, where Rui's 4,200, Prince is 44, Reddish is 46. Ideally, as a DFS player, I would like to see one of them just not really be popular and then play more of that one, because I don't know how the minutes are going to break down. Unfortunately, on this slate, we have Prince projected at 22% ownership. We have Rui at 28. We have Reddish at 30. So Prince is getting the least, but he's also a really bad fantasy producer. And those numbers are all pretty close together. So there's not one clearly standing out as like a contrarian tournament pivot or anything like that, unfortunately.
All right. Speaking of contrarian, how about letting the tools do the work for you? Nobody wants to do that, right? Oh no, I can do all this searching myself. On the screen, I have Odd Shopper. We have dropped the price point here, $14.95 for a week, $49.95 for a month. It's a great deal. You get in the Stochastic Odd Shopper Discord as well, but you can see what I've got here is let this do all the heavy lifting. So sorting just on leagues, I've sorted on or filtered on player props, and you can look across all of the different books and see some wild swings in the lines that are available. So if you like unders, you've got Quez Watkins here. Under 15 seems like the consistent line or the best line that we can get. That's available at PointsBet. You can see other books are under 14.5, and you've got FanDuel all the way down at under 13.5. So what this is doing is it's ranking the different wagers across the way for you. If you like overs, hey, look, here's CD Lamb, but look at how different this is across the different sites. You've got over 90 yards here. You've got over 101 yards on DraftKings here. You've got over 89.5 on WinBet. So you can look at these and see what makes the most sense and what looks good to you. If we look at something like Halliburton, so let's look at PRA. That should be pretty consistent across the sites here. But what you can see is on FanDuel, you're getting a minus 113 for the under on 46.5. You can see Pinnacle, which is one of the sharper books, right? One of the more aggressive books. They're at minus 146. That's a 3% difference on ROI for your winnings. That is huge when you're trying to eke out profit. So this is what we mean by shopping the odds and the lines, but Odd Shopper is doing this for you. You can see we now have the expert picks section, which is collecting all of the tagged wagers that Ben and Lindy and Aton and Greg and Nathan put up here, so you can see where they are when they last selected that wager. So how old it is, and then it's updating the lines as well. So this is a very helpful tool, so you don't have to go through the entire Discord to find everything. But even if you go into our Discord, I'll show you. We have let's see all the Discords I belong to. Pretty much nothing exciting, but the Stochastic Discord here, you can see we have sorted out where you can look at all of the insiders. So you get access to all of those premium channels, as well as the daily pick channel where people are putting in all of their wagers. Not all of the wagers go on that expert page. The vast majority of them do, but like Ben just dropped in some soccer ones this morning. That was a short time frame where they're only going to, he hit those for us about 30 minutes before the game started. So you won't see those on that page, but it's a lot of fun. So you guys can check that out. It is a pretty good deal. Again, $14.95 for the week, $49 a month, and access to all things sports wagering. OddsShopper also does a decent job of using the power behind it to set up parlays for the pick'em sites as well. So you don't have to sort through screens upon screens of different sports and information. You can go to OddsShopper. So even if you're not in a state that has sports wagering, it does do the heavy lifting for you there.
Adam, I asked in chat about thoughts on TJ McConnell with Nembhard out. So my primary thought is that I feel more confident that McConnell's going to play. Obviously, after him playing well in the last two games, I expected him to play, or I would have expected him to play even if Nembhard were active. But Nembhard being out, I think, removes mostly the risk of the just surprise McConnell didn't play today thing. I'm not super confident that it gives him more minutes. It definitely opens the door for him to get a couple of minutes. You look at the Boston game where Nembhard played 5 minutes. McConnell played 9 in that one. Halliburton played 40.1. So they overlapped for like a minute. In the second half, when Nembhard did not play at all, McConnell simply backed up Halliburton. Halliburton played about 20 and a half minutes in the second half. McConnell played 3.5. So it doesn't have to give McConnell more minutes. I think it does. It at the very least, I think, just locks him into being the backup point guard, which he probably was going to be anyway. And then there is, the chance for some overlap. It really just depends how tight of a rotation the Pacers run. Like if they go out there and treat this as we want to win the championship, and they play Halliburton 42 minutes, and they play Brown 38 minutes, and they play Hield 34, 36, something like that, you can squeeze it where like McConnell doesn't need to play anything outside of the minutes Halliburton is not on the floor. But if they run a looser rotation like they did against Milwaukee last game, then you could see McConnell play a couple minutes alongside Halliburton. For the season, he's played 33 total minutes, 66 total possessions with Halliburton on the floor. So basically the way I'm viewing it is it has the potential to be a slight boost for McConnell, but I think the biggest thing is just it alleviates a lot of the risk of the random rotation change, but I don't think that was coming anyway, given how McConnell's played.
No, and that makes sense. He kind of entirely different player, but his fantasy aspects kind of remind me of like a JJ Barea, right? They're out there. Clearly, they're not the tallest guy. They're not, not exactly the best on-ball defender by any stretch of the imagination, but they jump the passing lanes. They're always there in the opening spot to get a catch and shoot 3 or a catch and shoot long 2. They're not afraid to make the extra pass to a better teammate in another spot, or the hockey pass where they're not getting the assist, but somebody else is. When you get a stagnating offense, these guys are key that type of player is key to shake things up, but also in a freewheeling game, he can jump passing lanes. We saw in his last one, 11 minutes, and he had 3 steals. That it's not going to happen often. The game before that, he had 9 minutes and no steals, but he is capable of multi-steal games, which is kind of the unlocking of him to getting to a potential 20 fantasy points. I am hoping we have him for 10.8 minutes. I kind of thought 12 would be about right, but you're absolutely correct. It could easily be 8 or 6. Depending on if they're willing to overlap him at all with Halliburton. So,
yeah, and on the same basically subject as McConnell, Isaiah Jackson is really volatile to me as well. So he played 16 minutes last game, and he's 3,200. He's projected for 24% ownership. I think the most likely case is that he plays backup center minutes today. And I think there's just an assumption, though, that that's like a lock, especially with Nembhard being out. But keep in mind, in the game against Boston, Isaiah Jackson DNP'd, and Andrew Nembhard played 5 minutes in that game. They essentially, 2 games ago, ran an 8-man rotation with the exception of 5 minutes for Nembhard. This is the championship game against the Lakers. It shouldn't shock anybody if Jackson either just doesn't play or plays much less than he did last game. The thing that makes me most nervous, and I don't want this to come off as like, I think Jackson's not going to play. I do think he's going to get backup center minutes. But Josh and I had talked before that Milwaukee game that we thought Isaiah Jackson would play because Obi Toppin offers you nothing in the way of rim protection. And you have Giannis playing basically center with the second unit for the Bucks. And it's just going to be a disaster if Obi Toppin's out there. Here you have Jackson Hayes as the backup center for the Lakers. Anthony Davis does generally play with the second unit as well, but it's a little bit different, in that regard compared to the Bucks. I still think Isaiah Jackson gets the backup center minutes. I do think it's likely that Miles Turner plays more than the 32 he played against Milwaukee. And, again, Isaiah Jackson's just going to play whatever 48 minus Miles Turner is. But it is kind of interesting to think about. Like, you could come up with an Indiana rotation where Jackson doesn't play. Nembhard is obviously out. McConnell gets, the backup Halliburton minutes. And it's just a really tight rotation where all the actual minutes are going to the starters plus Nesmith, essentially. Again, I don't mean it to say Jackson's not a good play at 3,200. I think he is, but we've seen 2 very, very, very different rotations from Indiana in the quarterfinal and semifinal games.
Yeah, and then there's I don't think Jalen Smith's going to play today. I was searching for news today. It's so funny because a lot of the news providers are now more or less associated with the Yahoos or the ESPNs, et cetera, of the world for their blurbs. Most of those season-long sites, they're not counting today's games in the standings, but your fantasy games. They did count the semifinals and the quarterfinals, but they're not counting today. So it's led to a whole bunch of issues across the sites because this is if you look on some sites, this game just doesn't appear on the schedule. If you look at others, there is just nothing for today, meaning it just defaults to blank screen. It's pretty wild. It's like we always have the early season issues with double headers in MLB, right? Making things wonky, etc. This is the first time that's really happened for the NBA because this wasn't, and who knew who was going to play in this game, right? So it's been kind of shaky there. That said, I don't think Smith is going to play. We have him in the projections right now, and he's kind of got the edge over Isaiah Jackson. If for any reason Smith played, it really takes everybody out of contention in that backcourt. It just makes them even longer dart throws. But I do like your Isaiah Jackson call there.
Who are you talking about?
To summarize, Jalen Smith, he's in our projections. There are a couple sites that say he's questionable. There are a couple sites today that have him ruled out.
The injury report has him
out.
I
couldn't find a definitive. Oh, thank you. Why didn't I just go there? I'm such an idiot. See, there you go. Thank you. That'll get corrected on our side. Last night, the word was that he might play. So anyway.
I mean, there I guess is the chance that he just gets upgraded, but
yeah,
he is.
I don't think he is. But there was. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say as of the 10:30 injury report came out 8 minutes ago, he is still listed as out.
Okay, which is the expectation. But again, I was just calling out. Today has thrown off a lot of the standardization of the different fantasy platforms. The DFS sites are totally fine, but some of the information aggregators as well as the season-long stuff are kind of handling this a little bit differently. But that is going to do it for today. Final thoughts before we get on out of here, Adam.
Not related to this, but just saw a quote from Mark Dadnall, or however you pronounce his name. Finally, I can't wait until more coaches get this, but he was asked about letting Chet Holmgren play through early foul trouble last night. And he said, I just want the refs to foul him out. I don't want to foul him out. The conservative route on that usually bites you. Yeah, I wish more coaches would learn that. But it goes back to, Einsteinium had just asked, if Miles Turner got in foul trouble, what do you think we see? Is it more Jackson or do they go to the smaller lineup? And my answer was, I would hope that they just let him play until he has 6 fouls, because I think going to extended Isaiah Jackson here is probably bad, and going to Obi Toppin at the 5 is probably also really bad. So hopefully he would play through it, but love to see that quote.
Excellent. Hey, maybe some of these guys are getting self-aware. Hopefully we can beat the race to AI becoming self-aware before more of these coaches become self-aware and the world ends.
Right.
But with that, we're going to get on out of here. You can follow Adam on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Stochastic _COM. With that, gamers, good luck and hit the like button on your way out.